So the first game is called Card Spiral, and for this game you need a pack of cards, you need 2 dice, but you can make do with just 1 if you can't find 2, so just one is fine if you can't dig out 2 dice, and you need some kind of counter. I've stolen the dog from the Monopoly game here to use as my counter, but it could be anything. It could be just a coin, some kind of marker, and you will need one for each player if you'd like to play against someone else, so a counter or a marker for every player. Now the first thing you need to do is, with the pack of cards, you need to remove any jokers, kings, queens, jacks and tens, so you only want the aces up to the 9s. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. Right, so I've split up my cards. I've taken out all of jokers, the 10s and the picture cards. Okay, so don't need these ones. Now what you need to do is you need to lay your cards out in a spiral. You need a bit of space to do this. So you can start in the middle and you can put them in different directions so that you can create your spiral. Got lots of 8s coming out. I probably should have shuffled these a bit better. So you create a spiral with all of your cards just going around. Okay, I probably won't put all of mine out for now just because of space with the camera. So I'll just move it up a little bit there to make it easier. So I'll just put a few out. So you can put the whole pack out, but I'm just going to do a few more here just so I can show you how to play. Right, so you start, well, you can start on either end if you'd like to. You can start on the end and work your way to the middle, or you'll start in the middle and work your way out. It's up to you. I'm going to start on the end. So you put your piece at the end, your counter. So you can play this with one person, but obviously it's more fun playing with 2. And then what you do is you move on to the first card. So this is 9, and you roll your dice. Now you can choose here, because this game is mainly for working on times tables, but you can use it for addition and subtraction as well. So there's options here. So you can either use 1 dice, and this has obviously got the numbers 1 to 6 on it, so it will test you multiplying numbers 1 to 6. All right, so you roll the dice. Now I've got the number 5 there, so what you have to do is then you have to multiply the number on the dice by the number on the card. So 9 times 5, or 5 times 9, whichever way around you'd like. And if you get it right, so you do need somebody to be able to check and make sure you've got it right, or you could have a calculator to check your own answer if you're playing on your own. If you've got it right, you can stay where you are. Okay, well, sorry, if you get it right, you can move on to the next card, and then it'll be the next person's go. If you don't get it right, you need to stay where you are. Okay, so if I said 9 times 5 is 30, which is not, it's 45, I would have to stay on the 9. Okay, and then when it's my go, I'll roll again and try again. If you get it right, you get to move along to the next card. Now the variations are, you could play with 2 dice, and what you do is you roll both of them, you add up the numbers, so 3 and 4 is 7, and then you're timesing 7 by 9, or 9 times 7. So if you're using both dice, you could be doing numbers up to 12 times table, because you've got, potentially you might end up with a times by 12. So to make it harder, you add the numbers on the dice and then times it by your card. Okay, and then the other option, if you don't want to do times tables, is you can roll the dice and you have to add up all of the amounts and see if you get it right. That's a much easier version. Okay, but I think the times table one is probably the best one to go for. Maybe try with 1 dice first. So just to recap, if I've got it right and I moved on to 7, I'm going to use 1 dice. So 4. So 4 times 7, 7 lots of 4 is 28. Now, because I got that right, I can move on. So I want to move all the way around to get to the middle of my spiral. Now, if I got it wrong, I would have to stay where I was and then have another go with another roll of a dice. And remember, you can use 2 dice, so you could roll and add up the numbers on both. So 4 and 5 is 9, and then multiply it by the card. Okay, so that makes it harder. So 7 times 9 is 63. Now, if you need to have something to help out with this, you could have a multiplication square to help you. You can find those online, a multiplication square. You could also, remember, you could write out, if you're using 1 dice, you could write out the trickier ones, like maybe 4s and 6s, just so that you've got it next to you to help you. But remember, you can always flip a multiplication sum, and sometimes flipping it makes it easier because it will help you to see that actually you do know that times table. So you can play this against somebody else, you can play this on your own. If you're, obviously you need to check that your answer is correct, so you know whether you can stay or you can move on. So have someone who can check your answers, or you could have a calculator to check afterwards. Just make sure you're honest about whether you got it right or wrong. Now let's have a look at the second game for this week. Now this game is called Mystery Cards. Now you need a pack of cards, but what you need for this one are you need ace all the way up to 10. So again, you don't need the picture cards, but you do need the 10s. Okay, so we do want those 4 10s, but you don't need any of these ones here. Okay, so for this game, you need to give your cards a bit of a shuffle. Now, what happens here is you can play this with 3 people, but I'll tell you how to play it with 2 first. So what happens is one person goes first and they draw 2 cards, and they need to keep these a secret. Okay, so they keep those cards secret. Now they'll look at their cards, I'll show you because you need to see them, but they're not going to show the other player. Now they can choose to either add or multiply the cards together, and then they're going to tell the other player, so they're either going to tell them the total is 18, so for these ones, if I added them, the total is 18, or they might say if you multiply them together you get 80. And then what the other player has to do is to try and guess which cards you are holding. Okay, so they're not going to see them. Now, choosing the multiplication one for this one, 80 being the answer, there's not many options of what that could be, because although you can make 80 in different ways, you could do 20 times 4 is 80, but you're not going to have a card with 20 on it. So you need to think about the cards that you've got, which is 1 to 10. So this one might be easier to guess if you said that they multiply together to make 80. But if you say that the total is 18, then it could be 10 and 8, but it could be 9 and 9. It could be, well, that's it. That's all it could be, couldn't it? 9 and 9, because we can't go any more, because if we have 10 and 8, or 8 and 10, 9 and 9, couldn't have 7 and something, because that would be 11, and we don't have a card that's 11. So there's 2 options there. So your opponent needs to work out which one they're going to go for, and then they will guess. Now they can guess 1 card at a time if they'd like to, rather than saying both at once. But they just get 1 guess, and if they get it right, they get to keep the 2 cards, okay, and they become theirs. If they don't guess your mystery cards, then you get to keep them, okay, and it's whoever has the most at the end. So you draw your 2 cards, the next person, they have a look. I've got another 10. So 10 and 4. So I could either say they multiply together to make 10 times 4 is 40, or I could say the total is 14. Now, for both of those, there are different options. There are multiple possibilities, so that's quite a hard one. But your opponent needs to guess and see what they reckon you've got in your hand. So you either tell them what they multiply together to make or what they add together. Now, if you want to give them an extra clue, you could tell them the other option. So for example, if you decided to multiply them, you could say to them, these multiply together to make 40, but they add together to make 14. So if you wanted to give them an extra clue, you could tell them both, and then that would help narrow it down a little bit. So if they want to ask for that second clue, you can tell them the other option, the adding one or the multiplying one. Now, if you're playing this with 3 people, you have one player draws 1 card, one player draws another card, but the difference is that they don't look at the cards that they have drawn. So the third player, what they will do, I'm just going to put these down. Player 1 will draw a card, but they won't look. Okay. Player 2 will draw a card, but they won't look. Now, player 3 is going to look at both of these cards in a minute and tell them what the total would be if you added it, or what they would be multiplied together. Now, the people that drew these cards, they can't look at them. So it's a bit like that game where you stick a post-it note to your head with a person on and you have to try and guess who you've got. So what you do is this. So the first player picks up a card but doesn't look and puts it on their head. And the other player picks up a card but doesn't look and puts it on their head. Now the third player will say, well, the total of both of your cards is 12. Or you could say, if you multiply them together, you get 20. And so the 2 players that have cards on their heads have to think, what could it possibly be? And they're racing to try and work it out. And they think, what could it be? Now, if they have a guess each and they can't work it out, the next stage is that they're allowed to look at each other's card. So I still don't know what mine is, but I could look and see, oh, the other player has got a 2. And this player will realise that I've got a 10. And then it will be a race to work out what card is on your own head. So if I know that they multiply together to make 20, if I have a look and see that this player has 2, I must have 10. And so I would quickly try and guess 10. And if this player saw that I had a 10, they might quickly guess that they have 2. So that makes it easier. So that can be the second round if they don't get it after a guess. Okay, so that's the mystery card. That's how you can play with 3 people. All right. So 2 different options there. You play with 2 people and you draw 2 cards and tell the other player what they add together to make or what they multiply together to make. If they want an extra clue, you could tell them the other option. So if I said to them they multiply together to make 8 and then they wanted another clue, you could say, well, they also add together to make 6, to see if they can guess it. If they get it, they get the cards. If they don't, you keep them. Or you can do it with the numbers on the head with 3 people. I hope you enjoy that game. Both games, Card Spiral and Mystery Cards. Let me know how you get on.